The night sky over Sanctus Ferrum rips like steel under a torch. Warning klaxons fold into cathedral bells. Vox towers stutter. A line of white-hot light opens from horizon to horizon, and everything that looks up, workers on manufactoria roofs, pilgrims at way shrines, gunners in bastion spires, feels the sudden, abraded pressure of reality moving aside. Air turns metallic. The city's thermal shields moan as pressure spikes. The rupture isn't a wound, so much as a door, remembering how to close. Something falls through. It is small against the seam, white, green, a form that sheds the last strands of alien glare, unarmored, bare-chested, falling in a posture that reads as both plummet and refusal. It rotates once in freefall, a man's shape in outline. Then the torso flexes, and the outline becomes a verdict carved into muscle. A larger shadow shears away from him, part of an orbital freight ring, broken in the rift's opening, descending like a guillotine made of city. He lands. The shock travels through promethium pipes and underhive beams. Windows pop. A dust ring rolls across the central plaza of Basilicon Ferrum, overturning incense burners and prayer sellers' carts. The falling freight arc is still coming, misaimed to shear the upper third of the pilgrim district. The figure rises into the settling grit, eyes animal bright, and the skin that looks like it should be flesh is instead a corded, impossible green. He jumps. Air screams around him. He meets the falling arc and doesn't so much catch it as stop it from existing as a falling thing. Hands go up. Spine locks. Clamps of muscle engage like a field of interlocked pistons, and the momentum collapses into his frame with a sound like mountains clenching their teeth. The freight arc bows. The stress lines in its ribbing splay white, then fade as he changes the force's direction, throwing it sideways, across a void canyon of hab stacks toward a dead manufactorum yard. It hits there with a contained, crushing thud, instead of scything through 10,000 bodies. People who survive by doing exactly the right thing at the right time do what saved people do. They go still and watch. Another section of the orbital ring spears down, flame-shawled. He is already gone. He reappears on the spearing thing, running up its curve, driving his fingers into slagging metal to hold his place as it burns under him. He digs, minor suns shedding from his hands as he splits the ring's spine, then kicks his way through a web of rivets with an economy that makes the impossible look practiced. He puts his shoulder to the mass, pulls, and re-aims it as easily as a person corrects a slipping picture on a wall. Sirens harmonize. Auspex officers on Fortress Command's 9th floor follow a streak of green on their hololithic grid and realize the streak is a person. Their Lord Admiral walks in, black-shouldered, pale under the lights, watching the green blur thread catastrophe into lesser shapes. "Who in the throne's name is that?" says Lord Admiral Cassian Vorn, not taking the name in vain so much as spending it on a necessary question. "Unknown contact," says the Vox chief. "No transponder, no field signature, not a psyker, not anything I can file." The figure lands a second time. Not a crater so much as a statement. Pressure contained. He braces a tower with both hands while its core supports shear like wet bone. He looks up into it like an engineer reading a problem. Then he squats. A slow, careful lowering, and the tower settles an inch. He speaks, low and involuntary. Something rough and human in a voice that feels like it should have more vocabulary for anger than this moment allows. He lifts. The tower responds. He coaxes its collapse into a kneel. Pilgrims spill out the doors and run with heads covered, whispering as if the thing holding their basilica up can hear. "Whoever he is," says Vorn, "he saves our people." Inquisitor Severin Holt doesn't answer out loud. He watches from behind the Admiral, his rosette heavy at his throat and more weighty in implication. Holt's eyes are tired in the way that means he inventories threats with his pulse. He leans into a picked slate, freezes frames, zooms on green sinews, the not-quite-human geometry of shoulder to neck. He says nothing because he is listening to the background of his thoughts, trying to hear if the warp takes an interest when the thing in green moves. It does. Not a chorus, just a tension, like a crowd stopping mid-breath. The stranger looks at the citizens, and then at the mid-air freight still coming. Smaller masses now, shorn by his earlier push into manageable threats. He claps his hands once. The sound is not a sound. It picks up fire and eats it. It turns a looming blaze into a shut door. Dust and heat roll outward without flame. Children scream with startle rather than pain. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak a hero's line. He just turns toward the next thing. First contact happens because Governor Talia Orpheon walks out under the ash, removes her filtration mask, and bows without kneeling. She is a secular authority with a medic's first training and a governor's spine. She wears a coat with stitched seals and a pistol that's mostly a vote of confidence to the men around her. She steps within 10 meters of a figure who could pull open a starship and treats him like a person. "Sanctus Ferrum thanks you," she says, voice amplified by a vox cherub that flutters and settles, confused but obedient. "I am Governor Orpheon. We have wounded. We have fires under control. We have questions." His head ticks toward her. The eyes are not alien. They were exhausted in a way that reads as old. "People were falling," he says. The language isn't low Gothic, but the vox cherub tries its best. His words fit nonetheless. "I don't like that." "We noticed," she says, almost smiles. "Doesn't. We would like to notice it longer. Please, come with us." Holt arrives with a retinue in black. He does not bow. He doesn't draw. He meets the green giant's eyes and puts a slow, careful weight on each word. "What are you?" The green figure looks around at the hisses of flamers, the bowed pilgrims, the city that smells like hot iron and fear. He hesitates. "The Hulk," he says. The way he says it is not a boast. It is a fact learned the hard way. Orpheon's eyes flicker. The first noun. Holt watches the syllable land in his memory like a seed with too much gravity. The air shivers. Vox officers look at each other. A broadcast tone they don't own takes their channels. The stars over the city birth new lights, and those lights are wrong. They are angles that don't belong in air. The seared seam returns, larger, coordinated. Warships the color of coagulated bruise drag themselves into real. Hulls knitted with script, engines that look like organs. The first wave's debris wasn't an accident. It was a marker flare. Something used the rift to scent the world. Lord Admiral Vorn swears by 2 saints none of the crew believe in anyway, and turns to Holt. "We'll need your authorization for interdiction over the Basilica approaches. They're coming down hard." "They are," says Holt, gaze not leaving the Hulk. "And one of them is coming here for him." The first wave hits like a dropped cathedral. They aim to land in the middle of the city and rip outward. Pods the color of dried blood peel open and offer men who don't move right. Cultists with faces painted like flayed maps of saints. They chant in languages that didn't exist yesterday, should not exist tomorrow, and yet do, because consistency is an indulgence war doesn't afford. The Hulk moves. He doesn't run to meet them. He runs to bend the battle's geometry. He jumps into the path of the first slammed pod and palms it. It isn't a ball. It's a jagged seed full of vipers and knives. He puts every angle into his grip anyway. He turns its momentum upward and throws. It takes a new arc and splits a second pod mid-air, turning both into junk and bad intentions. Gun lines stabilize. Vorn barks vector orders. Basilican Ferrum's Aegis cannon nests swing and speak in a language that never goes out of fashion. Hard, fast metal at supersonic honesties. The Hulk hears their rhythm, sees their arcs as if someone chalked the air with lines of force. He corrects his next throw 2 degrees to carry a pod into a kill box instead of into the people who made one by accident. Cultists find the ground regardless. Lean men whose bones remember a better place and hate it. They lift icon cages with lives trapped inside like lanterns full of screams, and those screams are almost spells. The Hulk lands on hard stone, like the world is a trampoline, and drives his fists into the street. The shockwave goes forward only, a shallow wedge of force that trips the first line. He is careful with the phase of his anger. He vents it like an engineer bleeds pressure pillows. Factories with good supervisors don't explode. He refuses to be a bad supervisor. One of the pods isn't a pod. It is a throat. It opens. The thing inside used to be a man. It is not anymore. It wears armor like a church wears relics, with consideration and a wrong idea of reverence. It carries a sword made of the logic of a lie. Heat bleeds from the seams of its mask. It looks down at the Hulk and says in a voice that breathes vacuum, "The green storm." "Stop," says the Hulk. He does not stop. He comes fast, and the first swing doesn't cut matter so much as possibility. In a smaller story, it would take off the Hulk's head. This is not a smaller story, but the blade still hurts him. It bites into a place no blade should reach. The Hulk's certainty. Pain is information, and this information says, you are a thing that can be divided from yourself. He grabs the blade. He bleeds. Bright. Improbable. He squeezes the false logic until it crunches less like metal than like a lie being corrected. The man inside the armor says a word that makes 3 children in the crowd clap hands over their ears without knowing why. The Hulk steps into the man's space and humbles him without flourish. He hits him in such a way that the hit shares itself across the cultist ranks, a distributed, equal opportunity message. Less men get up than would have otherwise. The few who rise do so with new caution. Helmets swivel. The giant isn't a slow monster. He's a problem that thinks. By the time the last pod hits the gutters, Vorn's gunships own the sky above Basilica Square again, and the Aegis lines track with the kind of beauty you only get when everybody remembers the cost of getting it wrong. The Hulk does not roar down a street and turn it into a canyon. He puts his open hand to the ground and flexes just enough to make a rolling wave that flips bodies and deposits them neat at the feet of the Black Shield line. He isn't gentle. He's precise. Secular and sacred watchers whisper different words for the same thought. Governor Orpheon's face opens around something like relief. Holt's face closes around something like fear. They descend into the War Council chamber heavy with old decisions. Hollow pylons show the incoming vectors. The world saints look down in painted panels and choose not to judge, which is worse. Vorn sweeps aside a cluster of servitors and stares at the board. Holt and Orpheon stand on either side, the Hulk behind them, because chairs are for humans, and he is making an effort not to break the table by simply existing. You achieved a kill ratio of 6-1 and diverted 3 mass casualty events, says Vorn, blunt, military. I have to say it. Well done. It isn't done, says Holt. Voice quiet. Eyes on the green man like a scribe checking a column of numbers that won't add. The first wave's always belief testing. The second is catechism. Catechism? Says the Hulk. Holt doesn't blink at the strange mouth forming a low Gothic word. They teach you the right words, and one wrong one hidden inside. They teach you to say it often. They make you mean it. He turns to Orpheon. He is powerful. He is also a problem we do not understand. Our doctrine holds that power without sanction corrupts, even when it saves, especially when it saves. Doctrine also holds that 1,000,000 deaths are worse than the stain on a rubric, says Orpheon. She looks at the Hulk as if daring him to fail her now. You saved cities in minutes. I've never seen guns do that. The Hulk looks at his hands. They look back, unhelpful. I don't want to hurt you, he says. He says it to Orpheon, to Holt, maybe to himself. Holt puts 2 fingers on the table and leans in. We've heard that before. We have also heard it elsewhere, after. It shouldn't be either or, says Orpheon. We make a space for him. We put guardrails around it. Cassian? Vorn has never liked arguments where both sides are right. He rubs at an old scar that looks like a misplaced equator across his cheek. We keep him between shield lines and churches, he says. We treat him like an armored column. He goes where we say. He does what we need. He does not, under any circumstance, enter psyker containment or any place with young minds. Hoth laughs once without humor. He is a psychic hazard without being a psyker. The Hulk's jaw works. The muscles around his eyes pull. He is listening to people talk about him like a siege engine with feelings. He understands why. He is older than most cliffs, but not as patient as a river. He holds the door that the next wave rushes toward. Sirens again. This time the pitch is different. Narrower. Meaner. Translation signatures, says a servitor to no one. Many. Pattern unknown. Pattern. Self-editing. Smarter, says Hoth. His voice goes flat. They brought a magister. Briefings are supposed to calm people. This one doesn't. Hoth draws the symbol in light. A 9-pointed eye that never looks directly at you because it's busy looking at all the other things. 1,000 suns, he says. The word riding 1,000 years of wronged history. Sorcerers who turned their sin into a method. Magister Vale of the Cyclopean Conclave. He collects paradoxes and makes them into knives. He will try to turn your anger into a contract. The Hulk listens. He doesn't understand the past behind the words, only the future they imply. How do I hit that? He asks. Holt's gaze is nearly gentle for the first time. We keep him from talking to you long enough to put a blade in him. We keep you angry enough to fight, and calm enough not to make the wrong promise. We do not let him offer you a way out of your pain. He flinches. The motion is almost nothing. It feels like a continent shifting a centimeter. Vorn traces ship icons. We'll interdict with Ferrum's Spear and Wrath of St. Decima. Grey Knight Detachment Mortis Arc arrives in 90 minutes. Soil War in 20. They drop in the crater where he landed. Holt? Choir to Cathedral 5, says Holt. We burn air with hymns. We lace the square in sigils. We make every hateful syllable he speaks crawl. Orpheon watches the Hulk. He is not watching anything. He is listening to his interior weather, trying to be smarter than the forecast. She steps closer. Lower voice. You saved us. We will not throw you away to prove we can do hard things. But you need to decide what you are when hard things happen. Are you a door or a wall? He looks at her as if she asked if he is a man. I'm a hand. Then take ours, she says. Magister Vale does not walk. He arrives. The square's temperature drops a notch toward a memory of winter. Flags on the basilica steps move without wind. The world acts like the pause between heartbeats, where anything could happen. The sorcerer appears like a thought that refuses to explain itself. A tower of blue and bronze armor etched with script in a language you forget properly as soon as you learn it. His helm's faceplate is stylized into a saint's mask, broken in the act of a smile. He lifts one hand, and the street under the Hulk becomes a set of stairs without moving. The Hulk moves anyway. He picks his steps. He doesn't give the geometry the dignity of acknowledging it. Green one, says Vale. His voice slides through the choir's ward lines like oil through cloth. The choir hates that and simply sings harder. I have watched 1,000 worlds weep under lesser storms. You are honest weather. Come, let us make you purposeful. Shut up, says the Hulk, and the number of ways he means that makes 3 acolytes faint without shame. They clash. The first exchange creates a crater inside the crater. The Hulk's fist travels. Reality doesn't like the path and tries to detour it. He makes new path. Vale's staff sweeps, and the sweep isn't distant so much as a suggestion that the Hulk try on being farther away. He refuses. The staff hits him anyway, in the place Holt warned about. Not flesh, not bone, not even will. It strikes at the Hulk's concept. The pain is new. He staggers. He doesn't fall. Your rage is a lens, says Vale. Not smug, not cruel. Simply correct. It can magnify. It can also burn what you try to see. The Hulk breathes. In. Out. His knuckles are red with blood that looks wrong against his color. He looks down, then up, and his eyes are not the eyes of a beast. They are scientists when the experiment breaks the lab. He closes the distance and does the same thing he has always done when gods try speeches. He hits the man in the mouth. The hit breaks something that is not the helm. The choir's song takes purchase around the crack. Vael is surprised and angry with himself for being surprised, which is a nice human moment for a monster to have. He slides backward, then forward without traveling. He appears in the Hulk's shadow and whispers, not with sound. You hate being weak. Memories open, uninvited. Stairs. A pipe. A lab full of good intentions. A hand that shook when it held a syringe a long time ago. A face saying, "We can fix this," and meaning a different this, because people always do. A crowd chanting monster, because sometimes crowd is a lens too. Vael makes the whisper kind. That is the trick. It sounds like relief. You could end it, if you wanted, the whisper says. You could bend war. You could take this ugly empire and squeeze the death out of it and throw it away and keep only what's good. Why choose to be a man when you could be a solution? The blade in the words slides in gentle. Hulk's knees flex. The ground complains. Fire wakes along his skin in subdued glows. Not just heat, but something older. A sunrise in negative. His chest swells with two angers trying to occupy one room. The simple anger at harm, and the more eloquent anger at having to be angry to do good. He sees himself, not how others see him, not how old scientists see him. He sees himself standing in a field of skulls that used to be tyrants, and, in the middle, a little pile that used to be people who were in the way. He sees himself choosing efficiency. He hates what he sees. He hates that he wants it. He staggers because the thought has mass. He roars because the thought demands it. Vael is there, right there. Staff lifting in a line that means to end something. Holt shouts a word with the choir, and the word is ugly. Purposefully ugly. A net of syllables that catch Vael's elegance and make it cough. The staff still descends. It hits the Hulk's shoulder and punches through strength. It finds the place where the Hulk holds Bruce Banner like a secret. Pain travels in a diagonal that feels like it shouldn't be possible. The world keeps believing in it anyway. He falls to one knee. 1,000 voices take a breath together on walls and balconies. 2 children without parents near them start to cry because all the adult noises say help has a rhythm, and it just missed a beat. Sacred intervention is not a miracle. It is a tool used wide. Gray Knights arrive as bullets with men inside. They hit like a prayer hammered by blacksmiths. Their armor catches sun and him. Ward seals light. They move into the square not like saviors, but like doctors asked to cut without anesthesia. Their leader plants a halberd that hums with grammar. An old grammar older than the Empire, tuned to fix sentences that lied. Demon, he says, not at the Hulk. At the inspiration behind Vael's mask. Vael smiles because he refuses to be rushed, and then his smile is gone because he is. The Knights do not debate with him. They stop him from choosing which topics to talk about by putting metal in those places. Holt steps forward and draws a circle in ash with a boot. His acolytes bleed faith into the ground in small, bright drops that smell like copper and candle smoke. The Hulk stands. Not quickly. Not triumphantly. He stands because falling was something that happened to other people, and he does not like being similar to other people in that way. He grabs Vael's staff. It is hot with a logic that feels like scorn. He takes it in both hands and breaks it. It doesn't go easily. It goes because he makes it, and because the choir lends him blunt notes like wedges. Vael pulls back from a future where he keeps this body. He reaches in other pockets for other knives. Holt's wards slap his fingers. The Knights press. The Hulk arrives again, like the thing that happens at the end of bad ideas. He hits Vale so hard that 3 lies fall out of the air and die on the stones. The sorcerer collapses into a shape that will leave a stain of history here for a long time. The square exhales. The Hulk breathes like a bellows. He looks down and sees his own green blood mixing with red on the stone. He looks around and sees too many colors of liquid. His anger doesn't know where to go. He turns and hits the ground with a thunderclap he doesn't shape enough, not quite because he is hurt and angry, and temptations have a half-life even when you refuse them. The shockwave flings bodies. One body doesn't get up. He goes very still. The choir's song doesn't stop, but it changes key to something that can hold small griefs without breaking. Holt doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. He sees the loss, measures it, puts it where such things go, which is to say, everywhere he can see it again. He steps forward. His voice is not cruel when it must be hard. "Price," he says. The Hulk nods once. The shape of his face is the shape of someone who could end the conversation forever by ending everything, and chooses not to. He looks at the small body again. He closes his eyes. "Take me to your boss," he says. The journey to Terra is not private. It is a public thing. A procession across a sky of ships. Lord Admiral Vorn assigns his flagship, a knife of a cruiser named Saint's Irony, because some confessional long ago went badly, and the ship remembers. The Hulk rides in its forward cathedral where gunners pray before firing because you aim with what you have. He sits in a space designed for titans to kneel and tries to remember how to be smaller. Chaplain Militant Aurelius goes with them because all journeys need a man in black who has met his god and lived. He is tall in the way of men who are tired of ducking doorways. His Crozius is a mace with holy circuitry like veins. He sits across from the Hulk and speaks as if to a sinner at a confession that might also be a duel. "You are anger," says Aurelius, as void light skims the hull. "We sanctify anger when we point it right. We condemn it when it chooses its own target. Which are you?" "Both," says the Hulk. He says it without pride. "You speak our doctrine and reject it in the same breath," says Aurelius. There's a smile in his voice. "You will like our master. Your inquisitor doesn't." "Holt likes nothing that has a pulse," says Aurelius. "He loves everything enough to kill it, if killing preserves more. He is honest about that. Honesty is a kind of mercy." The Hulk looks out a viewport at a line of escort ships like a rosary of metal and sees his reflection in the glass. A scarred planet looks back, haloed in defense platforms that whisper their own prayers. Tech Kant, in a key that makes teeth ache. "What is your god?" he asks. He means, what does he make of men like me? "War made honest by purpose," says Aurelius. "Mercy made wise by blood." Holt arrives with a parchment he doesn't need to read because he doesn't trust voices when the subject is holy. "Changes," he says. "We have company." Company comes in the shape of a ship that shouldn't be this close to Holy Terra. It moves like a question that comes too late in the exam. It is sleek where imperial ships are baroque, jagged where imperial ships are ceremonial. It bleeds light that isn't warp and isn't void. A hailing channel opens without anyone allowing it to. The voice that spills in hits the Hulk in a place no blade found. "Bruce," says the voice. It uses a name the Hulk wears on the inside like a shiv. "Come home." On the display, the figure who speaks is tall and green. Not quite the same shade. Not quite the same set of the jaw. The eyes are clever. The smile is small. Behind him, a bridge staffed by men with skin like bronze. Women in star white. None of it is this galaxy's aesthetic. Space around the ship curls with a physics that hasn't been taught here yet. "I'm not Bruce," says the Hulk. The denial is a habit and a truth. "I know," says the mirror. "I am. Or I kept him." The body learned to obey the mind. The mind learned to love the body. I found a way to end the spilled milk of rage. "Come, let me help you end yours." Holt's hand drops to his bolt pistol, not because guns help against things like this, but because hands need a plan. Aurelius stands and lifts the Crozius. His prayer is half formorphed. The mirror foe, call him the Quiet King, because the title fits, if not the history, steps closer, and the light around him bends like glass over a forge. I cured us, he says softly, and he believes it in the way a good tyrant believes in his math. I took the endless appetite for hurt and gave it rules. In my world, the cities didn't need walls. We made bridges instead of barricades. We used strength as scaffolding. But, and here the smile turns almost sweet, we chose who allowed to walk on those scaffolds. We chose carefully. We planned it. We stopped making the wrong babies. Enough, says Aurelius, voice iron. Where else do you cut men to fit your piece? Everywhere, says the Quiet King, unabashed, but kindly, efficiently. We spared them the indignity of choice when choice meant error. We spared us the pain of failure. We spared the world the blush of chaos. Bruce, Hulk, whatever you prefer. Your ache is an artifact of the premise that you should have to hurt to do good. End the premise. Be better. The ship's Auspex scribes die on their feet, hearts stopping under a pressure called despair, because sometimes ideas do that. Holt snarls a prayer that has teeth and drags the room back to functional. The Hulk doesn't answer for a long breath. The bridge crew watches a man argue with the one thing he cannot break. I don't want to be better if better means smaller, he says at last. I don't want to be good if good means gone. The Quiet King's smile pinches. His eyes harden in inches, a glacier moving toward war. You could be a god, he says finally, harsh. You choose beast. The Hulk looks past the screen to the planet below. He can feel it already, a throb of mind and machine like a heart that never stops. He makes up his mind where it was already made, because choosing is mostly admitting what you knew. I choose man, he says. The lights go bright. Not flare bright, designed bright. The ship's windows whiten with a symbol no physics book accepts, and every pilgrim knows. The double-headed bird opening its wings not as a threat, but as a measure. The Quiet King flinches, not because symbols hurt, but because belief does when it's big enough. The sign of Terra fills the viewport, and the channel cuts, not rudely, not violently, simply, no. Reach the throne, says Holt. And the way he says it sounds like we have survived another thing we couldn't afford. Now let's pay for it. Terra isn't a planet. It is a cathedral with continents for pews. They arrive through rings of fortresses that make other worlds' defense grids look like jewelry. The atmosphere tastes old and full of incense. The ship slides in on assigned beams laid down by men born to orchestrate war. The Eternal City sprawls with gold and grime braided into one rope. The Eternity Gate vomits column after column of custodian guard who do not march so much as define movement. The Hulk walks under arches built for god machines. 1,000,000 candles burn without smoke. Choirs chant without rest. His feet sound small on stone that remembers blood better than footsteps. He passes sisters with faces like icons and eyes like mothers. He passes men called nulls whose lack radiates, and his skin prickles under their silence. He passes a boy who looks up and sees hope in the way children do. Immediate, greedy, undeserved, correct. They take him into a silence that makes the rest of the world sound noisy by comparison. The throne is not a chair. It is a mountain with a man at its core. The air is warm with the careful heat of things meant to never grow cold. The Hulk stands where men greater than any statue have knelt and does not kneel, because what would that mean? Custodians watch without blinking. Holt stands off to one side, smaller than his authority for once. Aurelius goes to one knee, not in worship, but in practical respect. Governor Orpheon stands because no one told her not to, and because she suspects you keep your spine here or lose it forever. Silence opens a door inside his head. There is no voice. There is thought. It arrives like a hand that doesn't touch, like light without glare. It is not kind. It is not unkind. It is accurate beyond mercy, which is its own mercy. You are not of here, says the thinking. You are of war, like we are. You do not love war. We do not either. We love men and women who would be ground up by war if someone did not decide otherwise. We decided to be that someone a long time ago, and we are tired. The Hulk does not speak aloud because speaking would be rude in here. He thinks the way he hits, with intent. I don't want to be your weapon. You already are, says the throne, not gently. We all are. The difference is whether you choose your terms. They show him 3 paths, not in pictures, in the feel of possibilities like muscles flexing. Return. The seam opens. He goes home. He wakes in a bed, and the dream of a city that smelled like iron goes away like all dreams do when morning is loud enough. He keeps a bruise he can't explain. A child dies in a city he will never remember, and he never knows. And the world rolls on, give or take the million lives he could have saved if he had stayed. His anger finds its old uses, and maybe better ones. He becomes something like a man. The cost is carried by people who never get to call him by name. Free agent. He stays. He refuses sanction. He chooses his battles. He makes enemies of friend and foe alike by being right at the wrong time. He stops atrocities and starts smaller ones without meaning to. Worlds say his name with fear and love. The Inquisition kills a planet to keep him from being tempted and writes a book about why it had to. He saves people who hate him and loses people who don't. The Empire survives him and learns nothing. Sanctioned servant. He stays. He kneels to no man but binds to law. He accepts guardrails. He allows a chain around his heart called oath. He puts his hands where they put them until he earns the right to put his hands where he knows they must go. He saves many. He kills fewer than the books predict. He becomes a part of pageantry, whether he wants to or not. He is held to account by men he could break. He lives a long time under watch, and sometimes the watch saves him from himself. The seeing ends. He stands with the taste of iron under his tongue, which might be blood or might be the city. He knows the right answer already. He wants another. That is how right answers are recognized. They taste like self-betrayal that turns out to be self-rescue. He lifts his head. He looks up at a shape that looks like a man interrupted by machinery and sees something like solidarity. A creature trapped, doing what only it can do. He makes a bargain the way men make them when they want to be good and refuse to become obedient. I'll serve, he thinks, with conditions. The presence does not laugh. That is compliment enough. State them. No exterminations where we could evacuate, he thinks. No lies about the small dead. If I break, you stop me. If your law breaks people, I stop you. I'll carry your bird. And here something like a smile cracks his interior rock, if it can carry me. Accepted. The word isn't a word. It is a seal pressed into wax that was his life. Pain follows, not punishment. Procedure. Tech priests who talk in binary and monks who talk in psalm combine their trades. They lay wires across his skin and symbols into scars he already has. They ink his back with a lattice that conducts nothing physical. It is a rosarius inscribed in living tissue. It shines once, gently, when a null walks by. It hums near witches and goes quiet near kids. It does not make him less. It makes him able to mean his promises longer. They bring him a pauldron once worn by a saint who was only a man with a good sense of timing. It is too small in every way, so they bolt it to a harness that respects the physics. On the white field, they paint the double-headed bird in black and gold. Below it, they paint a sun, not of fire, but of lines. 12 rays, each a word in a language no one here knows. Gamma. He looks at it and feels a thing he has not let himself feel since he fell through the wrong door into the wrong sky. He feels owned and does not hate it. He feels responsible and does not panic. Chaplain Aurelius taps the pauldron with a knuckle. "Looks silly," he says, smiling like a priest at a wedding. "Feels heavy," says the Hulk. "Good," says Aurelius. "Things that mean something should." Holt watches and does not unclench until the thing on the Hulk's back hums when the choir sings. He doesn't trust symbols unless they bite. This one does, but politely. He nods once, and in that nod is a promise to shoot the Hulk in the head if needed, and to shoot anyone who makes it needed sooner. Governor Orpheon stands under a pillar and does not cry, because crying here feels like misusing water. She breathes out a long-held breath anyway. "Welcome," she says. Later, when the new sign of him catches the new light, "Please don't make me regret saying that." "I won't," he says. He doesn't promise not to fail. He promises to try again after. They test the oath immediately because the galaxy is attention-seeking when someone makes a vow. Word goes out like a smell. Orcs roar, turning their heads to a wind only they can taste, yelling "wah" with a joy so honest it is not a sin, and not a virtue either. Eldar seers go quiet in rooms full of clean smoke and hate the new branch in their probability trees, because it means they were right and wrong at once. The Tyranid fleet that breeds under the black of between stars twitches, its synapse web pulsing around the idea of green meat hard enough to break teeth. The ruinous powers notice without agreeing how they feel about it. Khorne wants to own him. Tzeentch wants to edit him. Nurgle wants to pity him. Slaanesh wants to hear what his roar sounds like at final volume. Vale isn't dead enough. He crawls through a hatch in reality he built for this very situation, and nurses his broken staff like a bad theologian, which is to say, lovingly. He hisses a vow that sounds like a poem until you parse it and realize it's a shopping list of sins. He will have the green storm. He will make it transactional. The Hulk returns to Sanctus Ferrum in a ship with wings of gunfire and steps onto the Basilica steps with a new weight. Kids stare and then shout because children accept uniforms as permission to hope. Men and women do not shout. They watch for the clause in the contract they don't like. He meets their eyes. He lets them decide slowly. Orpheon walks beside him, not quite matching his pace because his stride is not for human sidewalks. She points with a governor's gesture. Small, precise. Here, this wall, these people. He listens. He does not assume he knows what to hit until she tells him, which is new and good. A general with a face like a boot asks for an orbital strip mining of a shanty hive that hides snipers. The Hulk shakes his head. "No, evacuate, then hit. I'll stand in the street until you pull the last kid out." "That's doctrinally inefficient," says the general, which is a real sentence spoken without shame. Holt, startlingly, sides with the Hulk. "It is, and it is also required under the new terms," he says, as if saying them makes them normal. "Get them out." The Hulk stands in the street. Bullets hit him and flatten and fall with sounds like insects in water. He doesn't flex. He waits. He counts children, then old men, then women who refuse to leave until their mothers go, because everything takes time, and it is disrespectful to rush. When the last ones are off the block, he lifts one foot and puts it forward, and the street doesn't exist in the same way anymore. Vorn's artillery speaks the way a judge does. Small stories happen inside the big one, because that is how big ones matter. A man raises a pistol to shoot a woman who said the wrong slogan yesterday, and the Hulk's shadow falls over him. The man lowers the pistol without making eye contact, because some choices are easier in shade. A sister of battle dies with a hymn in her mouth, and the Hulk pauses, not in respect for death, but in respect for commitment. He hates the way it looks, but likes the way it feels when people mean things. They fight a war that doesn't ever end. He is now one more tool. He is also one more symbol. Symbols don't stop blades. They change their aim. The mirror returns while the Hulk sleeps standing up. The Quiet King doesn't hail this time. He enters a dream because it is easier to be correct there. They walk through a city that never happened. It has clean lines and no shanties. Children run in prescribed parks. Men who would have killed do not because their heads are full of needles that sort their impulses neatly. Women who would have sung angry songs do not because the songs are gone, edited from memory like a bad scene cut from a long film. The Hulk hates the city and hates that he could learn to like it. "You could rest here," says the quiet king, voice a kindness pointed like a sword. The Hulk's face moves with the thought of a smile and stops before it happens. "Rest is for after," he says. "There is no after," says the quiet king mildly. "There is only now, organized." The dream breaks because a bell rings. A real bell, in a real basilica. He opens his eyes to dawn and to a symbol painted on a wall in a hand that can't paint, but wants to. It is a double-headed bird. Under it, in chalk and bad spelling, "Thank you, Big Green." He laughs once, which is a rare sound that is more frightening to enemies than his roar. Vile tries again with better tools. He finds a slum that believes in nothing and offers them a cult that believes too much. He puts his hand on a boy's hair and says, "Let's make you strong." And the Hulk arrives in time to show him what the difference between strong and used looks like. He doesn't kill Vale, because killing Vale would make a better one. He breaks his hand instead, which is not a metaphor. The choir's ward prayers don't cut Vale as deeply anymore. He is learning too. They will all have to keep up. The last image of the first year is a montage, because sometimes film is honest. A desert full of bones grows flowers because somebody arranged for water and didn't ask permission to be kind. Orcs land on a moon and find a green giant who smiles with all his teeth. They yell, "Wah," and he yells back. And 2 hours later, the survivors paint him on their truck as a god and leave to find a fight he won't interrupt. An Eldar Farseer drops a rune into a pool and watches it sink in a way that means the galaxy is not yet done ending. Tyranids invent a new organ and are disappointed when it fails to digest gamma. On Terra, a man who isn't one stares without sight and sees without eyes. His mouth does not move. 1,000,000 candles keep burning. On Sanctus Ferrum, a child sleeps with a wooden bird and a toy that looks like a man with too many muscles, badly whittled by a father who doesn't know how to make hands gentle and finally learned. Governor Orpheon writes a report that will be read by men and women who think they make history. She writes, "It is harder to be good now. We are doing it anyway." Inquisitor Hoth files a codicil that no one will see until they need it. It reads, "If he turns, end him. If he asks to be ended, refuse him. He is not allowed to stop if we cannot." Chaplain Aurelius smiles at a rosary and says 2 prayers, one for himself and one for a friend who is learning to be angry correctly. The Hulk stands on the basilica roof and watches ships put easy lines across a difficult sky. He touches the pauldron. The paint is chipped. The bird is still there. He breathes. He is a hand. He knows now whose he is, and under what circumstances he will withdraw it. He knows the blood price will come on days with names and faces. He knows he will pay it and make sure the right people get change. The camera moves back. The bird and the sun on his shoulder line up with the morning. The green on the roof looks, for a second, like a banner. Then he jumps. The city jumps with him, just a little, enough to know it's alive. The screen holds on the symbol until it is very small and very strong, and then it cuts to black. The black doesn't hold. It thins into dawn, and dawn over Sanctus. Ferrum always looks like the city forgot to sleep. He stands on the basilica's crown long enough to count the first 12 bell strokes. The 13th goes missing because a cherub gets tangled in silk, and a novice laughs and doesn't get punished for it. He listens to the factories starting up, belts clacking, furnaces coughing, a choir of honest noises that mean life. His pauldron is warm, where the lattice nests in Scar. The bird on the white field looks too clean for this rooftop. It won't stay that way. The Vox beat in his ear clicks, and Lord Admiral Vorn's voice arrives without ceremony. "Report to Drill Field 3. We're going to make your oath worth the breath it cost." He drops from the roof, which isn't falling so much as choosing a different floor. He lands in the drill lawns that used to be a market before the Exemplar War, and are grass again now by order of Governor Orpheon. She said the city needed places where the ground wasn't a transaction. He thought about that for a day. Then he stopped thinking and stood on it. Hundreds of guardsmen in black and iron are in ranks. Comms crackle. Commissars scowl because it's what they know how to do. Sisters of the Basilica Penitent stand at the edges, helmets off, arms folded, ready to explain theology with ammunition if needed. Chaplain Aurelius taps his Crozius against his boot and watches him with the look old teachers get when they like a difficult student. Vorn doesn't do speeches. He points at a wall of shield-locked infantry. Again, they run the drill until it's a habit. Stack on green. The Hulk moves like a line-breaker machine that learned to love pivot tables. He takes the first surge of fire with his chest and shoulders. He hears rounds snap and sees ricochet angles. And when a burst in the fifth volley wants to skip left into a sister's exposed jawline, he turns, a fraction, and eats it. The unit loves him for it in the unforgivable, inconvenient way soldiers love the things that keep them alive. They keep loving him when he makes them work harder. "Breaching in 3, Vorn barks, and the Hulk punches through a plasteel door with a measured blow that would have turned a tank into a conversation piece. He steps aside and lets the squad flow past him into the room. He doesn't chase kills. He takes corners and stares and fire for them. He becomes a moving horizon line that turns fear into math. By noon, a new phrase lives on the Vox. Green up. It means, move. You are not alone between the bullets and the children. He doesn't smile. Orpheon does, watching from the shade with her hands behind her back, like a woman pretending she had anything to do with inventing this and knowing that she didn't. She meets Holt's eye across the grass. Holt nods once, in the way a man nods at a raft that didn't capsize on its first day. An hour later, a commissar tries to shoot a fleeing conscript in the back as an example and finds a green hand around his pistol. The hand squeezes until the gun creaks. "He ran," says the commissar, jaw tight, eyes bright with doctrine. "A contagion." "He panicked," the Hulk says. He doesn't raise his voice. He looks past the commissar at the boy with the bad boots and the too thin wrists. "I know panic." Holt arrives in the breath before escalation and chooses his words like he's pulling fuses. "We execute cowards when we can't afford to teach. Today we can afford it." "Barely." He fixes the commissar with a stare like a safety on half-cock. "He will report to the penitents. He will return to his unit after 100 lashes to his pride." "Not good enough," the commissar says, too quick. "Correct," Holt says. "And necessary. You want him dead. I want him useful. The governor wants both fewer dead and fewer cowards. The Hulk wants to sleep at night. We will disappoint everyone a little and move on." The boy weeps the silent way. The commissar holsters the lesson he wanted to teach and learns one he didn't. By evening, the drill fields are empty. The Hulk walks alone past shrines where broken men arrive to be fixed, and not all of them are. He passes a room where Medicae cut a man out of a suit of armor while he begs them not to damage the paint, because the paint is his dead brother's. He passes a child who can move cups with her eyes when she thinks no one is looking and stops, not because he can help, but because he wants to. The child looks up at him and goes still the way birds do when a storm shadow crosses them. He raises a hand. He lowers it again. He walks on. That night, Holt finds him on the roof again. The Inquisitor stands with his hands in his coat pockets, like a man in weather he doesn't intend to admit exists. "You will be asked to do things you hate," Holt says, without beginning. "I will be asked to stop you when you do things I hate. We will ruin each other's sleep. We may save a city." "Not good enough," the Hulk says. "Correct," Holt says. "And necessary." He laughs once. It sounds like a rock in a well. Holt doesn't join him. He presses a small object into the Hulk's hand. It's a pendant in the shape of the bird, hammered in some poor man's shop. It's bent a little. It smells like smoke. From the widow of the man you knocked down by accident, Holt says. She said to give it to you if you stayed. He doesn't ask what she said if he left. The next week is a wheel. It turns around Sanctus Ferum's hurt places and doesn't grind them down so much as keep them from turning into knives pointed inward. He stops a riot by standing between two crowds and letting them exhaust themselves, shouting at a man who doesn't move. He pulls a Hablock's corner back into plumb with his hands and then holds it until the mechanists bolt scaffolds under it. He sits with a woman in a burned-out chapel while she dry sobs because she ran toward the fire and left her daughter in the washroom, and the daughter never came out. He doesn't have words for that. He doesn't try. He lets her lean against his arm and smoke a candle to the wick. War arrives mid-prayer because it knows when to knock. The Auspex Tower flares contacts that aren't ships and aren't meteors. They are lines of light walking down from the clouds like arguments that became people. They touch ground and forget to be light. They become men made of soldered geometry, eyes green with the idea of life. They carry guns that write darkness on the air. They step into the manufactoria, and everything metal remembers it has a better place to be. Necrons, says Vorn, a word like rust tearing. Tomb woke on Ferum's moon. Phase-shifting, atom-hungry, self-repairing, Holt recites. Strength does nothing to sentences they don't intend to hear. Then we make them listen, says Orpheon, not in a mood for hearing the wrong kind of poetry. They deploy in the Foundry District, where the streets know the difference between heat and heat. The first wave of warriors goes down, when guardsmen whose grandfathers learned to shoot mining carts in revolts rediscover that talent. The second wave rises from the pieces of the first and makes a mockery of honest labor. The Hulk hits one and it comes apart, and then together again. A joke told at his expense by a dead empire that refuses to stop speaking. He thinks of Vale's staff and of the way the choir's grammar had weight. He thinks of Holt's ward circles and how they bit not with force, but with the right kinds of words. He breathes. Aurelius, he says into the beat, talk while I hit. The chaplain's voice enters with the measured, thudding cadence of liturgy. Not the pretty parts, the parts that define. Stone is stone, he says. Bone is bone. Flesh is flesh. Words are from men. The dead may borrow them, but they do not own the meanings. It isn't magic. It is permission. The Hulk adjusts his rhythm. He stops hammering and starts insisting. He times blows to the chaplain's beats. Not because the beats do anything to metal, but because the beats tell the universe a thing it forgot. This is matter, and matter can be asked to behave. He punches one warrior as it mid-phases and holds, fingers sunk in a fog of not quite. He roars low, controlled, like a forge bellows. The lattice in his pauldron hums in counterpoint to a tone that hurts teeth. The thing sizzles into commitment. He rips its head off once the head agrees to exist fully again. It stays off. Anchor charges, Holt says, sending acolytes with rods tipped in pariah iron. Drive them into the ground around him. Make a square. Tight. The guardsmen move. They plant rods and the air in the square flattens, gets heavy, stops being a place friendly to forgetting. The Necrons step in and stay as long as you would want them not to. The Hulk makes a wall of broken geometry around the children huddled by the foundry stairs. He hands the children to a sister, one by one, and she shoots neat holes through anything that tries to hold that doorway, while her other hand reaches for the smallest hands, without looking down. A destroyer glides in on a humming belly and speaks with a gun. The beam grazes the Hulk's side. It is not light. It is a suggestion that a section of him never was. His skin smokes in absence. He steps forward anyway. He grabs the barrel. He squeezes. It flickers between being and not being, and remembers being a little better because his grip insists it should. He twists. The barrel and the thing attached to it scream in a pitch that makes men wet their eyes. It dies. He keeps moving. A lich guard comes with a blade that does not remember heat. It sucks warmth out of the air in apology. He meets it with his forearm, and the lattice burns against the null on metal. It bites him to the bone in a line that looks like a teacher's correction. He grunts. He grabs the guard by the collar of the old Empire and slams him into a pillar until both pillar and Empire give up a little. "They're phasing around our lines," Vorn says. "We can't hold the east approach." "Then change what east means," the Hulk says. He picks up a section of ground with both hands and flips it like a butcher turns a side of beef. The street becomes a ramp. The ramp becomes a wall. The Necrons do not so much run into it as fail to run through it. The guardsman's fire eats the line that thought it knew where it was going. The fight ends not when things are dead, because they don't stay dead so much as bored, but when the tomb decides it has made its point and withdraws it with dignity. The warriors turn to light that hates being light and step away. The last one looks at the Hulk longer than the rest, head cocked with the scientist's interest. It raises one hand, not in salute, in assessment. Then it goes. They count bodies. The number is wrong. It is less wrong than it could have been. A mechanist stands in the empty skeleton of a fallen warrior and cries because he has never seen a machine refuse to be property before. A boy pulls at the Hulk's harness. The boy has grease on his face in a pattern like a saint's mark and doesn't know it. "Did you win?" the boy asks. "No," the Hulk says. "We didn't lose." The boy nods, like a man nods at an invoice paid in part. "Okay," he says, and wanders off to find an adult. Holt limps over with blood on his sleeve that is either his or his acolyte's. He looks at the Hulk's side, where the beam's suggestion left a wound that doesn't bleed right. "Medicae," he says. "Now." "I heal," the Hulk says, already healing but too slowly to be polite. "Not from ideas," Holt says. He touches the lattice lightly, and it answers his finger with a buzz like a warning purr. "We'll tune this. It needs to bite harder when the world gets clever." They tune it in a chapel lit by more tired candles than pious ones. Tech priests argue in teeth-clicking code with sisters who baptize wires in holy oil, and nobody wins, and the lattice hum gets deeper. The nulls stand at the door like bad weather. The Hulk breathes through the ache in his ribs that is less pain than principle. The day after tuning, Eldar arrive because of course they do, when a path in probability gets interesting. They appear on a balcony without walking up the stairs. Their armor looks like dreams allowed to dry. Their faces are hard, with a remembered grief that they have chosen to worship. The Farseer's rune bones click in her hand like small, dry truths. She looks at the Hulk like a storm she predicted, and doesn't like being right about. "Mon Ki," she says to Vorn, because diplomacy means almost slurs, said with a smile. "You have taken a piece off the board that made several thousand futures tolerable. We will help you avoid the worst consequences of your clumsy luck." "Translation?" Vorn asks, tired. "She sees a wave," Holt says. "She wants to shape it without admitting we'll drown either way." The Farseer's eyes go to the Hulk. "You are a knife that thinks it is a hand," she says, and means it kindly. "You would cut only that which deserves it. There is no such thing. Be a knife that carves along the grain, and you will save more wood." He looks at her and sees a woman who lived through the end of a city and made a religion of preparation. He respects that. He hates what she's willing to spend to keep her math neat. "No," he says. She tilts her head and 10,000 dead lovers shift in her gaze. "No to what?" "No to cutting right," he says. "I'll cut wrong. I'll cut messy. I'll cut late. I'll cut where the blood buys a day for someone to learn better. I won't cut the child who would have grown up to be a problem because you say he will. Your empire does that every day," she says. "I'm not an empire," he says. She almost laughs. "You are now." She leaves a gift anyway because the Eldar always bring gifts with hooks. It is a sliver of something that used to be a god's mask. It glimmers and refuses reflection. "Hold this when the warp looks at you," she says. "It will look away." She doesn't explain the cost. She doesn't have to. The cost is always somewhere else. He hides it in the harness. He tells no one until he needs to. That night, Vale returns like an itch and a scar. Not in person. In rumor. Men whisper of a blue-robed teacher who went into the Shale Warrens and came out with a choir of boys who sing in Latin they never learned. The song spreads in alleys and scars. People stand straighter when they hear it, and then bend in a different place. Holt's agents go in and don't come out. He closes his eyes and points to a map, and opens them, and orders a cordon, and writes a prayer on his palm, in case he needs to turn his hand into a weapon. They go down. The Shale Warrens smell like mold and old letters. The song threads through the stone. Aurelius mutters liturgy under his breath, and the Hulk moves quiet for something his size. They find the boys in a circle around a man who isn't one. Vale's mask is cracked down the saint's smile, and his new staff is built from 3 different kinds of blasphemy glued with patience. He looks up and opens his hands like a teacher, asking troublesome students to be reasonable. "Green one," he says, "I wondered when you would audit the class. We are improvising a curriculum that might suit your needs perfectly." "Let them go," the Hulk says. "I will," Vale says, after they sing all the way through. The song edits anger into obedience. It will set you free from yourself. The boys' mouths move on syllables they don't own. The Hulk feels his anger shift under his skin like a tide thinking about the moon. The lattice hums loud enough to be a warning to others. He looks at the boys. They look back, eyes rolled white by a bliss that isn't theirs. He pulls the Eldar shard from his harness and closes his hand on it. The song hits a wall. The wall looks like nothing. Vale's head turns with interest, then annoyance, then calculation. "Ah," he says, "a dead god's face. How polite of our pointy-eared friends to interfere in Mon-K pedagogy." Aurelius charges, because sometimes the best way to argue is to break the desk. His Crozius comes down in an arc that is a paragraph. Vale meets it with a staff that is a footnote. Sparks argue. Holt's acolytes throw ward seeds. The boys keep singing, because the shard blocks the notes from entering the Hulk, but not from finding the room. He moves through the circle and does a simple thing that takes everything he is to do safely. He puts his hands on the boys' heads, one after another, and says, "No." He doesn't shout. He insists. He begs a little. The shard burns his palm. His lattice bites his collarbone. The song falters because the voices are interrupted by touch, and because some songs require you to be left alone to work. He keeps touching them. He keeps saying no. He keeps meaning it. Vale tries to talk into his ear again, a whisper slick as oil. "I can make you safe for children." The Hulk laughs in Vale's face and hates that he wants it. "Make me dangerous for monsters," he says through his teeth. The fight turns when Holt throws a name into the center of the room that nobody should have, and the air remembers a saint who died correcting grammar. Vale snarls. He rakes his staff across the Hulk's back and writes a sentence there that aches like a broken oath. The Hulk turns, slow and heavy and inevitable, and takes Vale by the throat. He doesn't squeeze. He holds. He looks into the glassy slots where eyes should be and waits for the thing behind them to blink. It doesn't. It is patient like space. He doesn't kill Vale. He breaks the staff again. Vale screams without using air and goes away the way men go away when they never needed bodies to begin with. The boys collapse. Breaths like sobbing bellows. The shard is a line of burned skin in the Hulk's palm. He opens his hand, and a flake of nothing drifts away. He hopes it went somewhere good. He doubts it. He doesn't regret using it. He regrets needing it. Holt leans against a wall and tries not to puke from the pressure in his head. Aurelius stands in front of the Hulk and says a prayer that sounds like an apology. "You did not bargain," the chaplain says. "You begged the right thing. That still costs." "I know." the Hulk says. The price arrives 2 days later as a dream, with a voice he knows too well. The quiet king stands on a dam, in a world the color of old paper. Water roars. The sky is full of clean ships. People walk in lines across bridges, with the ease of men who have never been told no. The king's hands rest on a rail. They are steady. They are not large. They command the river with gestures. "Come see," he says, not a threat, a tour. He goes, because sometimes the only way to refuse a gift is to accept it and keep your teeth. The city beyond the dam is beautiful in the way utopias are, edited. He can't see where the poor live because they don't. He can't see where the angry go because they do not get that way. He can't see crime because it doesn't help the math. "We used strength as scaffolding," the king says. "We reduced variance. We allowed deviations at the edges for art and love. We prevented chaos. What did it cost?" the Hulk asks. "Everything you think you owe the weak," the king says, too honest. "We told them the truth. Choice hurts. We offered to carry pain for them. All they had to give up was the right to surprise us." A siren goes off somewhere in the dam. The roar intensifies. The Hulk hears a scream that sounds like metal remembering it should be stone. The king glances and frowns, as if weather inconvenienced him. "Another time," he says, almost distracted. "We need to reinforce Sector 7. The Hulk feels the urge to reach out and lend his hands to the work of ensuring a city doesn't drown. It is a good work. It will also lock his hands to a machine that feeds on his hours for the rest of a century. He steps back. "Your dam is perfect," he says. "Your river's dead." The king turns, and the smile dies in inches again. His eyes cut like ice under a winter sun. "You will break and call it compassion," he says. "You will fail and call it human." "I'll try," the Hulk says. They fight on the dam because there was never another ending to this conversation. It's a fight of punctuation. The king hits with finals. The Hulk answers with commas. The king cuts with planned edges. The Hulk breaks and reforms. The king is faster in the mind. The Hulk is faster in the heart. The dam cracks because symbolic structures do that when men hit each other on them. He chooses the wrong thing on purpose. He drops to his knees and puts both hands on the failing seam. He holds. The king hits him 10 times like knives asking short questions. He doesn't answer. He holds. He bleeds in green lines that look like algae on the stone. He listens to the city hush itself, with the promise that the stronger man will do the right thing, and he wants to push until the crack becomes a door, and the water learns how to be free again. "I can't save your people if I drown them," he says. "You can't save my people at all," the king says, and the contempt is clean. A sign appears in the sky. It isn't an aquila. It isn't any symbol he recognizes. It's a pattern of light that insists, "Not here." The king looks up and curses in a language that smokes. "Get out," he snarls, and lets the dream close like a book on a brittle page. He wakes with stone dust on his tongue and a new cut on his shoulder that spells nothing and everything. Aurelia sits nearby with a candle and doesn't ask. Holt leans in the doorway with his rosette turned inward, so the metal doesn't reflect light into anyone's eyes. "You're bleeding metaphors," Holt says dryly. "I know," the Hulk says. They go to war again, because sometimes the only answer is the same answer, with better posture. Orcs crash a freight train into the southern railhead and turn it into a laugh you can ride. They yell, "Wah!" and he yells back, and they love him for it, because he means it. He pulls a knob out of a truck by his jaw and tells him a joke with his fist. The knob laughs and dies, and his boys paint the big green man on their ride with reverence, because praise is loud. They leave because there's a better fight somewhere else. He lets them. He isn't here to fix everything ugly that isn't hurting the wrong people today. A Tyranid feeder tendril learns how to drink gamma and almost kills him by inventing a stomach he respects. He tears it out and throws it into orbit, and Grey Knights shoot it for being creative in the wrong direction. He vomits green and black and refuses to learn what it was. He eats ration bars until he stops shaking. A rogue planetary governor declares independence and culls 3 hives in a week to make his point. The Hulk goes to his palace and knocks on the door. He doesn't smash it. He knocks. The guards don't open. He waits. He knocks again. Holt arrives with an exterminatus writ in his pocket he hopes not to use. Orpheon arrives with a camera and a noose. The door opens. The governor tries to have a conversation. The Hulk listens. Then he reaches across the desk and takes the man's hand and squeezes until bones talk. "You don't get to decide how many die because your feelings hurt," he says. "Neither do you," the governor gasps. "That's why I brought friends," the Hulk says, and steps aside for the law. They make mistakes. They are not miraculous. They become ordinary at a scale that scares him. He refuses to be scenery. He accepts being infrastructure. He hates himself a little for liking the pageantry, the way children draw his bird and his sun, and how it means nothing to a bullet but something to a life. Holt files his reports. Sometimes he omits a detail because he wants to keep a promise he made without paper. Sometimes he adds one because he wants the paper to be heavier. He doesn't lie. He arranges truth with an eye for stability. Aurelius prays. He drinks with men who need houses and gives them hymns that feel like tools. He teaches the Hulk a prayer that sounds like counting. The Hulk uses it when the noise gets ugly. It helps. He doesn't know if it reaches anyone. He doesn't care. It reaches him. Governor Orpheon grows grayer at the temples. She signs too many papers that mean a man's life will be shorter, and writes notes to herself on the backs of them that mean she remembers each name. She stands beside the Hulk at parades and in morgues because both are part of the same sentence. Magister Vale isn't done. He builds a book out of stolen oaths and tries to bind the Hulk with it. The book fails to close because the Hulk's hands are bigger. Vale smiles anyway. "Next time," he says, and leaves a curse that is just a schedule written in blood. Holt burns the schedule and writes a better one. Vorn moves ships on off days and doesn't explain why. The curse hits empty air and finds nobody home. The Quiet King returns only in reflections. The Hulk catches his profile in a window and turns, and it's only himself. He stops sleeping on his back. He dreams on his side like a man who forgot his ghosts. A year ends with bells that ring all the way to the shipyards. They hold a procession, not because anyone needs one, but because it disciplines grief. The Hulk walks with the sisters and the chaplains, and the men in battered black, and the women with medals that catch light the way tears do. The bird on his pauldron is scratched, the sun's rays scuffed by hands that grabbed him while falling. He lets the scratches stand. The paint tells truth. A boy with a chalk draws him on a wall and for the first time gets the hands right. He sees it and stops. He looks down at the boy, who looks up with an expression that mixes ownership and awe in the way children claim heroes. "What's this?" the Hulk asks, pretending not to understand. "You," the boy says, surprised an adult would miss it. "What am I doing?" "Carrying," the boy says, and shows the stick figure's broad back. On it rests not a basilica, not a city, a door. It's drawn wrong, crooked, too small, hinges facing out. It looks like it wants to fall. The figure holds it anyway. The figure's hands are big. The Hulk laughs again, quieter. "Yeah," he says, "that's me." He walks on. He carries. Far away, a sorcerer swallows his pride and goes to a god with a complaint about a storm that won't make a deal. The god smiles in 16 directions and offers him a bigger staff. The sorcerer takes it and tells himself a story about control. Farther, a king looks into a river and sees a man holding a broken dam together with bleeding hands and hates him for refusing a shortcut. He orders 3 new dams and a law that makes it impossible to be tired in public. On Terra, the throne does not move. A thought rests on a man in green like a hand lowered into a river to feel the current. There are no words. There is weight. It says, keep the conditions. It says, keep the mercy clause. It says, you will pay with friends. It says, you will make enemies that we cannot kill with guns. It says all of this without speaking, and then withdraws to the business of existing. On Sanctus Ferrum, the Basilica bells ring a sequence that means winter and work. The Hulk steps off the roof into the new year. He doesn't fall. He chooses a lower floor. He lands. He looks around to see what needs a hand. He breathes. He moves. He saves fewer than he wanted, and more than would have lived without him. The men who count make columns, and in the margins draw a bird with 12 rays, and do not know why it helps. The women who fight tie green cloth to their rifles in months with an R in them, and call it luck, while staring too long at the rooftops. Children dream that they are large, and wake up wanting to be kind. That's new. The camera holds on the city, which looks back without blinking. It isn't safer. It is braver. Green up, the Vox says somewhere, and a unit runs like a sentence toward a period they intend to move. The screen doesn't cut this time. It fades. Slowly. The last thing to go is the chalk sun under the bird, a smear on a wall that rain tries and fails to erase. The smear stays. The city does too. So does he.